Welcome to SBR Forum Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. We are previewing Week 3 in the CFL right now, and British Columbia heads into Edmonton in Week 3, and the Lions are currently lined as a 3.5-point road favorite, and total is 49.5. This is an interesting matchup and handicapping scenario. BC, of course, was the preseason favorite to win the Grey Cup, while Edmonton was ranked as one of the bottom two teams in the CFL. Both teams head into this game at 1-1, and both are coming off of wins. Edmonton caught a bit of a break with their win in Week 2, though. They got out to an early lead on the road against Hamilton, and then torrential rain set in, making it almost impossible for Hamilton to mount a comeback. Still, though, as I mentioned in my preview of that game, Edmonton does have some promising signs in general, and once they get the kinks worked out, they could actually become one of the better teams in the CFL. But definitely, they have still yet to prove themselves with a quality effort over a complete game. Their performance in Week 1 was awful, and while they were much better in Week 2, again, they were aided by the weather, and they didn't have to stand up to a counterpunch in the second half of that game. Nevertheless, all the positives for Edmonton are still in play here. Quarterback Mike Riley has a gun, and he played well in limited action as a starter for BC last season. And Edmonton was advertised to have a quality running game this year, and that did come to fruition in Week 2. Running back Hugh Charles had a huge game, and he wound up winning Offensive Player of the Week for the CFL in Week 2. And all that offensive potential is, of course, predicated on the effectiveness of the offensive line, which is young and inexperienced, but also huge and will probably develop and improve significantly over the course of the season. And they definitely showed a big improvement in last week's game. And on defense, Edmonton also has a lot of positives, anchored by leading tackler J.C. Sherritt and a defensive line that also has some promise. BC started out the season with a loss that raised a lot of questions, but then they answered most of them in a strong Week 2 home win over defending Grey Cup champs Toronto. But BC has also now suffered a number of injuries to key players, and their depth is going to be tested in this game. The replacements could come in and provide equivalent production, but it's no doubt a big question mark for BC heading into this game. Their starting slot back will be out, replaced by an eager veteran, but a guy who nevertheless does have questions surrounding his age and speed, and maybe more importantly, all-star linebacker Adam Bighill is also going to be out. Nevertheless, though, in Week 2, BC looked a lot more like the elite team they were assumed to be at the beginning of the year. Their rushing defense improved dramatically, the offensive line improved, and special teams improved as well, although special teams is still the Lions' weakest link. But the main big positive that came from that game was how well they shut down Toronto's dangerous offensive weapons. Edmonton figures to bring a lot less in that regard than Toronto did, and BC's defense should be a big challenge for Edmonton. So for this one, I'm going to pass on a side. I'm going to go with the under at 49.5. Even without Bighill, BC's defense should pose a big challenge to whatever Edmonton is able to put together offensively, and BC, for their part, has not looked too dominant offensively. They have an awesome array of receivers, but quarterback Travis Lulay has looked mediocre at times, and issues on the offensive line could crop up again on the road here. BC also went under their totals in 7 of their first 8 road games last year, and in 7 of their first 8 games overall last year, the final score was under 50 points. So putting it all together, my pick on this game is going to be on the under at 49.5.